Great. Well, I hope you had a lovely Christmas and New Year. I know a lot of people have had some disruption and plans have had to change. That was certainly true for us. We had 2 COVID positive cases in our household on Christmas Day. And don't worry, I've been testing negative throughout the week, but lots of our plans had to change, and our plans, in fact, are still changing. But we know we're not alone in that. We know a lot of people that's been a reality. But anyway, hope your Christmas and New Year has been great, has been a chance for a good rest and refreshment, and for all that this new year brings. And so today we are celebrating the feast of the Epiphany. We remember the visit of the Magi to the child Jesus in Bethlehem. The Magi were strangers from a far distant land. And this story reminds us that the good news of Jesus is for all peoples and for all nations. This truth seems especially pertinent in the wake of the funeral of the late, great Archbishop Tutu yesterday morning. Tutu did so much to bring peace and reconciliation between the many different peoples of South Africa. But he was also a beacon of light and faith to so many all around the world. And it does feel like a huge light has gone out now that he's gone. I never met Archbishop Tutu, but I did once drive past his house in Cape Town. That's my claim to fame. The year was 2008, and it was just 2 years before Tutu retired completely from public life. It was my privilege at the time to be involved in Acorn Christian Healing Foundation conference organised by churches in Cape Town. And the highly influential Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which Tutu had set up in 1995 to heal the many wounds of post-apartheid South Africa, was actually deeply informed by the ethos of our organisation, Acorn, deeply rooted, more importantly, in the Christian gospel. Reconciliation can only happen through dialogue. And that dialogue can only happen through people, enemies even, sitting down and committing themselves to a process of deep and honest listening. Archbishop Tutu was unwell at the time of our conference, but he wished us well, and I will never forget how warmly local Christians spoke about him and the extraordinary impact that he had played in healing and reconciling what he famously called the Rainbow Nation. There was undoubtedly, you don't have to read very far, there was undoubtedly an authoritarian streak to Tutu's leadership. But judging by all the obituaries of the last week also, Tutu will be remembered as an excellent pastor, as well as sometimes an outspoken prophet. He was one who could and would, like his Lord, sit down, especially with the voiceless and the dispossessed, and listen, and through listening, begin to give such people a voice. In their own way, the Magi too were also excellent listeners. Whilst with a few exceptions, such as the shepherds and Simeon and Anna, the majority of Jesus' own people seem to be blissfully unaware of the importance of the baby born amongst them. It seems the Magi, far away in a far distant land, had been listening deeply to the patterns of the heavens and to the ancient prophecies. And as a result, they had embarked on an extraordinary journey of faith to pay homage to the child Jesus, whom they clearly recognized, according to their gifts, as God's special king and sacrifice, not only for Israel, but for the whole world. As the child Jesus grew, and indeed throughout his life, Jesus too was an excellent listener. And he encouraged us to be the same. He encouraged us to be excellent listeners, not only to the people around us, not only to our enemies even, but to be good listeners to the world around us, to be good readers of the signs of the times. And as we enter a new year, 2022, what are the particular signs that we should be paying attention to? Well, let's start with the good news. It looks as though the Omicron variant is not quite as scary as we first feared. And again, we look to South Africa, not just because of the great Archbishop, but also to track the progress of this new variant. And things are beginning to look quite encouraging indeed. Now, the not so good news, and I was alluding to this before Christmas. In one of those very strange ironies of history, as we mourn the passing of one who did so much to end apartheid in South Africa, there are now many voices warning us of another apartheid opening up in many nations across the globe. Namely, an apartheid between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. Vaccine passes, locking down the unvaccinated, and God forbid, mandatory vaccinations are now a reality in nations as liberal as Austria, Germany, and Canada. And many are beginning to ask, what's actually going on here? What should we really be afraid of in this new year? Yes, we should be going on, we should be continuing to be afraid of COVID-19, absolutely. But is there now a much worse pandemic of overreaching authoritarianism and division, even in so-called liberal democracies? This goes far beyond whether anyone is pro or anti-vaccine. This is about huge systems being built around those personal choices, which are, at the end of the day, personal choices. And you might think, oh, has the rector become an anti-vaxxer? No, I haven't. I'm so thankful to God, like most of us, for our vaccines, particularly over the last week. But I believe there is something to be really, really afraid of in the coming year. And that is how, in many places, vaccination is becoming compulsory in one way or another. For many people, this represents a red line that shouldn't be crossed. I believe it is something to be really afraid of and something to really pray about. The whole message of the story of the Magi is that when it comes to the kingdom of Jesus, everyone is included. Sadly, when it comes to an increasing number of kingdoms in this world, 2022 is looking dangerously exclusive and divisive. As those who have chosen not to have the vaccine, which is their right, are excluded and penalized and even demonized in all sorts of ways. I wonder what the great Archbishop would think of such a situation. Desmond Tutu was often known for his humour and his cheerfulness, even in the darkest times. As the Church Times puts it in their obituary, Never had the Lord Christ a less solemn witness to the gospel of the resurrection. But now, many nations seem to be crossing some very dangerous red lines in terms of individual rights and social cohesion. I doubt that even the great Archbishop could raise a chuckle. Amen.